Welcome here to a wake-up call with Dan Tortora Spotlight Special, featuring picture-in-picture here with Nick Monroe, defensive passing game coordinator and safeties coach, most recently with Syracuse, has been with the Syracuse Orange football program for more than half a decade and has decided to move on to the Minnesota Golden Gophers. He is here with us inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, and I have had the opportunity to get to know him over time and get to appreciate and respect his work here in my hometown. And so it is with my great pleasure and a very humble heart that I welcome Nick Monroe to the show. Nick, how are you?
Dan, I appreciate that warm welcome. Hey, listen, I respect the heck out of you. Appreciate all that you do for the program. Appreciate all you do for the players. I mean, you're a class act all the way, and I really do appreciate you having me on. I'm doing great. Little stressed right now with everything going on, but I'm doing all right.
Yeah, and I appreciate your very kind words, and thank you so much for that. You know, you wonder in life, as I'm sure you do as a coach as well, when you go out there and you try to put your own mark on things and try to do things with morals and values, integrity and faith, and you hope that it comes through. You hope that people see what you're trying to do. And so to hear those words from you really does mean a lot to me. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Nick Monroe here with us. Nick, it's tough. It's bittersweet. And yet we're here this morning. So bring me into this decision. You've been with Syracuse, like I said, for over half a decade. You've been with Dino from the beginning here, and here you are moving forward onto Minnesota. So bring me into this tough decision that you had to make.
Yeah, this is I've been with Coach Babers now for 9 years, and him and I have had a lot of deep heart-to-heart conversations over those years. And of course, I like to think we've solved a few world's problems over the years. At least we think we have. But, it's always one of those deals where we're always like, what job is intriguing to you? Or what job would you want to someday be at? And, for me, I always said, for me, it's not one of those quote unquote high, mighty blue blood programs. For me, it would be the University of Minnesota. And, I grew up there. My family is there. My father coached there in the early 90s. And, growing up, that was our Division I team in the state. Everybody grew up a Minnesota fan. And it's one of those deals where it is almost like a storybook ending, it really is. So when this one presented itself, it really wasn't a shock to coach or myself, just like, hey, this is something we've talked about, before, and it would be a heck of an opportunity to go home.
How do you have that conversation with Dino, spending 9 years with him all together? How do you have this conversation of, hey, that place I told you about, well, something came up?
Yeah. I'll say this, it's pretty easy to talk with Coach. It really is. I enjoy talking with Coach about all kinds of things besides football. He's a pretty personable guy. And it really wasn't that difficult. The difficult thing is, saying goodbye. It's somebody I see almost every day for 9 years straight. And, now, our paths will have to cross different ways. But that was the toughest thing, is just being able to say, there's a chance this is going to happen. And, I'm going to be saying goodbye, and our run together is going to end, but him and understanding, I mean, it's a very understanding, compassionate man. So he totally gets this one.
Yeah, coming from Nick Monroe here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Nick, you are going to the team that you just coached against in the Pinstripe Bowl. So I have to ask, was there, in your interaction as these teams are interacting with each other and doing different things together, Minnesota and Syracuse and New York City, did this conversation happen before, during, after? I mean, you're there with PJ Fleck. So did he kind of pull you aside and say, hey, I got something to talk to you about after the bowl game? I mean, what happened?
No. This is gospel here. I talked to him after the game. We exchanged pleasantries after the game. Great job, a lot of respect for one another. You're doing a great job. The program's in good shape, blah, blah, blah. You guys played hard, those kind of things. We did not talk anything. In fact, I didn't even know they had a job open until he called almost a week after the bowl game. So there was nothing said there at the bowl site or or, right immediately after the game. Like I said, it was 5 or 6 days after the bowl game when he reached out.
And when he reached out, bring me into the conversation of how this all came to fruition for you.
Yeah, he just him and I have known each other for a while. I've always respected him. I think he's always respected me. And of course, the defensive coordinator there, Joe Rossi, is a very close friend of mine. We've known each other for 20 years. I was a funny story. I was actually, because the morning after the bowl game, my family and I flew to Minneapolis because, again, that's where my family's at.
Yeah.
So we were in Minneapolis for a number of days, and it was funny because I think it was that Wednesday night after the bowl game, I was flying back to Syracuse, and I flew to LaGuardia. That was where my connecting flight was. And, in Minneapolis, it snows every now and then. And my flight was delayed for a couple hours, and I missed my connecting flight in LaGuardia, but I wanted to get home so bad. So I just rented a car and I started driving from New York City back to Syracuse. And during that drive is when Coach Fleck called. My phone rang. It was him. And, we just, again, exchanged some pleasantries, kind of some small talk. And next thing you know, he was like, "Hey, I've got a job open on the staff. Would you be interested at all? Be interested in coming back home and being a part of this thing?" And I was, absolutely, I would. That's something that I've thought about and talked about and always kind of dreamt about. So that's how it really started.
So they say that everything happens for a reason. You can't make your connection, so you drive home. If you were on the plane, that phone call went to voicemail.
That's a great call. I never thought of that, Dan. That's a great point. Yeah, it would have gone to voicemail. And who knows? Maybe Coach would have been left a voicemail. Maybe he just would have been like, "Oh, next call." No, I'm kidding around about that. But yeah, no, you're right about that. I never thought of it like that.
So for you to get that phone call, how long did you take before you ultimately made the decision to go back home to Minnesota?
Oh, it went on for a few days there because it was more or less, us making sure everything was in the correct line, what he wanted, what his vision was, what I wanted, what I thought that I could help with, and what Coach Rossi wanted too. So it was kind of all three of us, collaborating and discussing different things, that their program, where it was at, what they're looking for, what they want to do in the future. And it was a few days there, probably 3 or 4 days, that we kind of talked about things, and just, then you start to realize, okay, that this really has some wheels, and it's all cylinders are going in the right direction. And you know what, it's definitely something that I could see happening. So
You had the opportunity to be a defensive coordinator, albeit for the bowl game, but to be an interim defensive coordinator. What did that experience mean to you, even though it was an interim position, to be able to take over the entire defense and rise above your position role to have that for the bowl game?
Well, it was awesome. Okay. Everything about it was awesome. It was great that Coach Babers entrusted me with it. It was great that our players played their tails off and rose above all the, for lack of a better word, chaos for a minute, because you lose Coach White, who was an instrumental piece to those young men's lives, and you lose Coach and I as well. And, forget about just the players as coaches too. It was a lot to handle, it really was, because that's a lot of moving parts in a small amount of time. So to get the opportunity to do it, to do it, but again, it is all about the players. If they weren't able to be mature enough and rally and go in it together, it would have never been remotely successful. And we have phenomenal coaches here too. Coach Acuff, Coach West, the young bucks that were here, Jack Potenza and Josh Bringale and Parker Baldwin. Those guys were awesome. Awesome. And of course, Coach Long came out too, and he was here for the last couple of weeks too. And it was something that I'd never been through before. But it's just like life, right? There's no such thing as a normal life. It's just life, and you roll with the punches and you go. And it was a lot of fun. I absolutely loved it. I really did. And then the cool part was watching them play their tails off in Yankee Stadium. They played hard now. you had some guys out there that hadn't even touched a college football field before, and we're out there and we're banging with, the Big Ten and banging with a traditionally ground and pound offense. And it was very, very cool. I enjoyed every minute of it.
How difficult is it to coach a game when the guys that helped you get there have either gone into the transfer portal, going to the NFL draft? How do you, I mean, would you like to see any type of rule where it's, hey, if you're on this roster, you're on the roster through the bowl game before you can make any moves? I mean, how, when you're coaching and you're having to put, like you said, guys into a bowl game that have never touched a college football field, would you like to see some type of safety net or some type of NCAA ruling that says, hey, if you're on this team, you're on this team? In the case of like a Deuce Chestnut, yeah, you can get in the transfer portal a week from now, but you got to stay on this roster. I mean, how do you look at that?
Whew, that's a tough one. I mean, I think at the end of the day, right, each situation is unique. Every individual is a little bit different. So the reasons for why they might want to go into the transfer portal are different. And I think we got to respect those decisions. I mean, look at coaches, right? Coaches get to leave too. And when you look at it from a young man's point of view, his ability to perhaps, for lack of better words, better off his family situation, better off himself for his future. I really believe, Dan, that this is the landscape of college football now. And it doesn't really matter if we agree or like it. It is what it is. And we're just going to have to accept it and figure out ways to coexist with it, because I don't see it changing anytime soon. And it is difficult though. It is difficult because it's all about getting the right pieces to the puzzle to fit on the grass. And one day at practice, you've got these 11, the next practice, you've got these 10, the next practice, you've got these 9, and it's just like, it's musical chairs to some degree. But I don't know if we're going to see much of a change with that right now. But like I said before, as long as you have a good culture and you have a good program and the players believe in whatever it is that you're preaching, then at least there's going to be communication, and at least there's not going to be a bunch of lies. So you're going to be able to have conversations and at least have a heads up and know and what to anticipate so that you can, from there, act accordingly.
And when you talk about having that transparency between coaches and players, obviously people can take to social media now, finding out the news of you leaving, some people on the team, student athletes frustrated. You're not with the team right now because it's part of the off season. So how do you have that conversation with them when they say, okay, we're coming back, coach, and as of a couple of weeks ago, you're coming back too, and now here's this change? So how do you have that conversation?
Yeah, well, the first thing is, I mean, the only way I know how to do it is to reach out to them each individually. Like, I wasn't going to do some blast out, blanket text or anything like that. I just started reaching out to the different guys that were on defense in our position group, guys that I might have recruited, guys that I've got close relationships with on the team. And again, it's hard to hit every single one, but start reaching out and just, it's not rehearsed. It's what it is, tell them from the heart, how much each guy or his relationship means to me personally, and how I can't wait to continue to watch them. And the biggest thing is that these guys, we're all connected now. We're connected for life, and I'm still going to be there for them. I'm still there for them if they need to talk, if they have problems, if they wanted to share something. A lot of these young men, I personally had an involvement with their recruitment. So it's deeper than just football. It's deeper than that. And I mean, shoot, they're a part of me too. Honestly, this was the hardest part about it. The hardest part about this thing was when I was reaching out to the different players and some of their responses. I mean, when they are able to send back compassionate, genuine gestures and words, then you made a difference, right? And I kind of joke around about this, but I'm serious. Someday I'll probably get fired from this profession because my heart is true and pure, right? I actually care about the players still. I care about the people involved in the program. And when you got a heart and a soul, sometimes you're a little bit vulnerable, right? Sometimes, you can get hurt. Sometimes people might take your kindness as a weakness. And I'm not saying our players, I'm just saying at some point in time, my ability to care and actually love the players, sure, at some point, somewhere down the line, it'll probably hurt me because it's not like this everywhere in college football. Yeah, Coach Babers speaks about the family in Johanna. Well, it's real. It really is real. The way our kids responded during those couple of weeks right there before that bowl game, and the way there's so many more variables in today's game, and for them to handle it and to perform like they did. I mean, I don't think a lot of people thought we were going to be in that football game. I don't think, besides our room and the people that are around this program, thought we had a chance to win that game. But we went out there, and again, offense, defense, special teams, everyone stepped it up and played their tails off. So that's kind of how I started to have those conversations with all the guys on the team.
Did you have some conversations that maybe went to a place where it was hard to hear the responses?
No, I mean, no, it wasn't. Listen, some of them are emotional. Yeah. Some of them mean, some of them might get a little bit deeper, but nothing that was like super, super, super like, oh my gosh, this is just, whatever. But it was, again, it made me feel like these young men accepted me into their lives, and I had at least some form of impact on them, not just as a football player, but off the field as well. And that still matters to me.
So you get the opportunity to be interim defensive coordinator. After that's announced that Dino's going to do that for the bowl game, he brings in Rocky Long. Did that have anything to do with your hopes and your dreams? That I know you talk about Minnesota, but when they call you up and say, hey, you could be co-defensive coordinator, and you're at a school that said you could be defensive coordinator for a game, did that affect anything, that there wasn't that road that Dino said to you, hey, because he originally said before hiring Rocky Long, if he does well here, then, we could look at that. We could, there could be that. And I talked to some guys on the recruiting trail that said to me, Nick Monroe told us he's the interim defensive coordinator for the bowl game, and he's got a shot to kind of prove himself. So when you found out Rocky was coming in, did that kind of writing on the wall for you tell you like, okay, if I want to move to a coordinator position, I'm going to have to go elsewhere?
No, I don't think that steered me in this situation at all. I was actually very excited when he did hire Coach Long. I mean, that is the guy in this system. So I was very excited. I was very excited to have him out for bowl practice. I was very excited to have him, help out and give suggestions and discuss things. That really didn't. The biggest thing was this. It really would have mattered. You could probably name a handful of other programs that, for lack of a better word, are just the mecca, right, of college football. It wasn't that. It was really just the fact that, you know what, I haven't been home for 21 years. This is something that is just too good to be true. The support and the family and the friendships that I have back there, it just, that was the biggest thing. So I understood Coach's decision, and I understood why he did it. That for him, that was a once in a lifetime thing for him to be able to hire Coach Long to run the defense that he's already implemented. And he's the architect behind this.
And so now you and I were talking off the air that your wife's family's from Hamilton, New York. So how did your family come together and say, okay, we've been in your home for almost a decade, and now we're going to go back to my home for the first time in over 2 decades?
It's funny. My wife, she's like, because she knew this day was going to come at some point in time. I mean, it was inevitable, right? But I FaceTimed her parents, and I told them, I'm sorry for taking your little girl away. I apologize. I know it's not what you want to hear, but we will fly you out whenever you want to come out. We'll take our vacations now to Central New York, and that's totally fine by both of us, because obviously we love it here. But she always said if she had her pick, and it was the good Lord's way of saying this is where you're supposed to be, she would want to live in two places besides here. One place is really warm down in Florida, and the other place was Minnesota. So those were the two places she always talked about. And obviously Minnesota was one of the two. So she's got a good support setting there too. So it's not the same as her own family, but it's a second close.
And for you, Nick, as you get set to embark on this journey, co-defensive coordinator with Joe Rossi, Joe being the defensive coordinator, and now having this where you're working with Joe, what can you say about that dynamic? I know that besides yourself on the coaching staff, a short list of guys still there. Mike Lynch was co-offensive coordinator at one point for Dino Babers here at Syracuse. So did he give you any thoughts on sharing this coordinator role with somebody else? And what are your thoughts on sharing it with Joe Rossi?
Well, I mean, let's get this straight. First and foremost, Joe is the defensive coordinator, right? He's the one calling it. It's his defense. It's, for lack of better words, just kind of more of a title thing, right? I mean, it's what it is. But Joe and I are so close. I mean, it's crazy how our pasts and how we've earned our stripes together over the years. Both starting off at Division III schools, then going to 1AA schools, then Group of 5 schools to Power 5 schools. And I mean, just over the years, our relationship has grown so much, whether we're on the recruiting trail together, having dinner together on the recruiting trail. When I go back home for vacation back in Minneapolis, I always go and see him. We talk ball. Even the last few years, it's gotten to the point where if he has a question or I have a question, I'm talking during the season even, hey, we're facing a lot of this week. What do you like? How would you defend it? What would you do? Any adjustments? Same with him. He would call me, I would call him. For the Purdue game. For the Purdue game this year was pretty cool because that's a common opponent. So back in the summertime, we were having a lot of sit downs game plan wise, like this is how we'd like to defend him. This is what we'd like to do. This is what they do well. Cause obviously he had seen Coach Brom and the Purdue Boilermakers offense for a number of years. So it's one of those deals where he's got some of the same mentors that, kind of helped him up in this thing, and as well did I. And then the other thing we used to do is when I was at Bowling Green, we used to do a defensive jamboree type of deal in the off season. So our defensive staff at Bowling Green, he was at Rutgers, then their defensive staff at Rutgers, and we'd meet up down in Nashville with Vanderbilt's defensive staff. And that was a lot of fun. And just the friendship just grew stronger and stronger and stronger. So it's been something going on for a long time. And now the opportunity to actually work for him and work together it's one of those special deals that doesn't come around every day.
And you say it's his defense, but what did PJ say to you as far as what your role is on this team? Because what was reported, co-defensive coordinator, cornerbacks coach. So what is going to be your true bread and butter at Minnesota?
That's a great question. I always look at it like this. As an assistant, my first and foremost job is to take care of the players, help them become better fathers, sons, and husbands off the field, help them reach and surpass their full maximum potential. And then for the head coach, I want to make his job easier. That's what I want to do. For the defensive coordinator, I want to make his job easier. So I want to be the best soldier there is. I want to be the guy that, they are thrilled and tickled to have there, and they can't replace, because everything that I bring to the table, it makes life easier for everybody.
What do you bring to the table, Nick?
Whew. Gosh, I sit there and say, I want to say this humbly. I really believe that my heart and my soul are probably what I bring to the table, right? I have an old school work ethic. I have a genuineness to me that I actually care about people. I don't like to lose. I'm a competitive person, and I think I keep things fun. So my ability to keep the game fun in this crazy turbulent world of college football, the players are still able to come into the building, come onto the practice field, and still have fun. But off the field, it's more than football. It's showing them that, being a husband, being a father is a really cool, rewarding deal in life. And you're blessed if you get to have that component. So I want to be able to show them that, I'm just more than a football coach, and there is such a thing called balance in life as well.
And before I let you go, Nick Monroe here with us, heading from Syracuse to Minnesota on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios with the Spotlight Special. And Nick, you've been known to be a very strong recruiter for Syracuse. I've heard many good things, and a lot of those great compliments to you started in the beginning of you being at Syracuse. Why do you feel you get through to high school and prep school student athletes, and even in the transfer portal and whatnot? Why do you feel like you've had such a positive recruiting history to be able to build almost immediate connections and respect with student athletes to the point where they trust you to come to the program?
Great question. Number one, I would say this: I've got a great mentor in that Coach Babers. I mean, that guy has got a beautiful personality, a great persona, an engaging genuineness to him, where he can get people to open up and feel comfortable. I think that at the end of the day, these young men, they're young men, right? And no matter what in the real world, no matter what you're involved with, there's good and there's bad everywhere. Well, if you're a bad soul and you're a bad person, these young men are going to see through that. You got to really be able to connect with them on a level of trust, on a level of honesty, and a level of genuineness that they feel comfortable. And same with whoever it is, helping them make the decision. They've got to be able to know that, hey, it's a Wednesday night at 2 a.m. and there's a family emergency, and they got to be able to get a hold of somebody. They got to be able to know that, hey, my son's 2,000 miles away, he's homesick. The amount of phone calls that I've gotten over the years from parents and family members of student athletes that have played for us, there's that connection right there of trust. They know that legitimately we're going to take care of their sons. And I think that when there's that level of comfort, that it makes it that much easier to send their sons or their young ones away, for even if it's a far distance.
And in going through that and having those connections, kind of going back to something we were talking about before, Dino's staff over the last 7+ years has never completely stayed the same from season to season. The transfer portal has made sure that the roster for Syracuse does not stay the same from season to season. So how do you answer those questions, or how have you answered those questions while you're at Syracuse when a student athlete says, well, why do the coaches keep changing, or why did these 15 players leave last year? How do you address the turnover changes?
Everybody's different, right? Again, we talked a little bit about that before, but every coach's situation is different. Every player's situation is different. At the end of the day, you have a head coach who instills a culture and his thoughts and his beliefs. And I think that when you're a recruit and you're coming in here, it doesn't necessarily matter who leaves. I always say this, right, wrong, or indifferent. I always say, hey, don't just pick a school for a player there. Don't just pick a school for a coach that's there. Don't just pick a school because it's in the ACC or the Big Ten. Pick a school that, if God forbid football was taken away from you and you're sitting around on a Wednesday afternoon in the middle of February, you're happy. Simple as that. Because where you're happy at is where you're comfortable at, and where you're comfortable at is where you're going to have a chance to be successful at. And I really believe that.
How was it to coach under Babers all these years?
It was awesome. I had a blast. I really did. I had a blast. Like, it wasn't work. It was fun. And going out on the field with him, having the energy, having the music cranking, the competitive nature, being able to talk some trash with him on the field a little bit, and not disrespectful, like evil trash, but just some good, fun natured trash talk. That's pretty fun, and I'll miss that. But I know that him and I are going to remain very close, and I will have his back forever and ever, and I know he'll have mine forever and ever. And like I said, the first time we're out there on the recruiting trail, we better be able to sit down and have a good dinner. I mean, that's something I'm going to miss too. I love being on the road with him. We have a blast together on the road. So we have certain restaurants we like to go to. Good food, good conversation. We like to share stories, obviously, with one another. And that's, he's more than just a boss to me. I mean, he's family to me. He really is. He's like an uncle to me. And I will stay in touch with him on a regular basis, and whatever he needs, I've got him forever. And I like to think he would do the same for me.
And having that connection, I've gotten to know, obviously not to the caliber of you, but I've gotten to know Dino over the years on a personal level as well, and spent time off the air with him, which I appreciate. Actually, the first true conversation we ever had was off the air in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
So what can you say about what do we not know about Dino to the typical fan out there? What do we not know about Dino Babers?
Gosh, I mean, everybody knows about his wonderful personality. Everybody knows about, he preaches family. Everybody knows his love for movies. Um, I would say this, away from, I don't know if he's ever talked about this in extent, but I would say away from football. You know what? I'll tell you something that's kind of new that I've noticed over the last year or so. He has 4 daughters, and now he has a grandson, or 2 grandsons, I believe. And watching him interact with his grandson just shows me that he was a heck of a dad, especially when his girls would have been younger. You can tell, like, even at the bowl game, he was carrying around one of his grandsons all the time, and he was very proud in a good way, in a good, loving way, like taking around. And I think when you see that firsthand, that backs up everything that you see, and you think, oh, guess what? This guy is the total package.
And for you, Nick, before we jump into something fun called rapid fire, which I want to do with you here, what do we not know about Nick Monroe that we're going to learn?
Gosh, I mean, I'd tell you what, before I got into this industry, my goal was to be an R&B singer. There you go. There's something. Okay. That was my deal. Yeah, I was putting tapes together in the studio, and that was kind of my dream before this whole thing went down 22, 23 years ago, whatever it was.
So hindsight 2020, being a coach, R&B singer, if you had to choose today and both were in front of you, what would you do?
Well, it's kind of an unfair deal, right? Because I know the ins and outs of this business. I mean, I guess, if I had a chance to now just bang, here we go. And now, I'm making music and stuff. I'd love to try that out and see what it's like. I don't know if I'm getting too old now where, I'm not quite as hip as I once was, or don't have all the ends as I once did. But no, I'm happy with where I'm blessed beyond blessed. My cup overruns, but that was kind of my dream before this whole football thing happened.
Well, I do want to let you know that before becoming a broadcaster, my first ever love and passion from 3 years old on was also singing, and I still sing to this day. So
that's awesome, man. That's cool. Very cool. Very cool.
So let's jump into rapid fire. We get 3 apiece, can be about anything in the world. You get to ask me 3, I get to ask you 3. None of these are predetermined, and you get to start it off by asking me, Nick, whatever questions we ask each other, we have to answer.
Ooh, okay. All right. Okay. All right, here you go. Rapid fire. All right. First and foremost, since we've been here at Syracuse, what's your most memorable moment from a football standpoint?
From your staff?
Yes, sir.
Camping World Bowl.
Camping World Bowl. Okay.
Yeah, by far, because to me, well, I was actually down because I cover the Jaguars. So I was down at a Jacksonville game. And when they announced it, I called up some people close to me, call it my family. I said, all of these media people are going to be talking about the Camping World Bowl, but I'm going to drive there now, and I'm going to broadcast from on site at the bowl, because I used to cover a team at the bowl, and it was the Citrus Bowl. So I went there, stood in the parking lot where I interviewed John Gruden, pardon me.
Right.
And John actually endorsed my show there. So I went over there and spoke about the bowl game. And then I asked the question that provoked the Eric Dungy very emotional moment. And so my dad called me up and said, it's crazy. And I said, what's crazy? He goes, how many defensive linemen you think hit Eric Dungy? But my son's the only one that made him cry. And so that was a very unique experience. And I've gotten to know the Dungies over the years, and got to do a thing called Project Dungy where I got his mom and his dad and his brother and sister involved in doing these videos and these personal individual conversations with me. He didn't know about it. And then at the end of it all, I got to present it to him. And then he did part 3 of Project Dungy, where he got to speak. So I definitely, I know that everything around that means a lot to me. And I also am, it will always be very close to Floyd Little, and not here on camera, but I'm staring at it right now. His book, Promises to Keep, and the Denver Broncos hat that I had him sign are here. One of my best friends. And so the 8 years that we got to spend together, I was with him and his wife after the game. And I was actually going through my divorce, and his wife asked me like, "Oh, how's your wife doing?" and this and that. And I told her, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And the way that Floyd looked at me and the way that he wanted to make sure I was okay, I'll never forget that. You talk about a family. I've met a lot of good family people at Syracuse.
Good. That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. Yeah, he's phenomenal human being. Loved visiting with him. No doubt about it. No doubt.
My
Okay.
first one. Okay. So my first one to you, going off the R&B thing, if you and I were touring in an R&B van, an R&B tour bus around the world, we could go anywhere, or go around. We're doing a country tour all around the country. What 3 R&B groups and or singers would you want us to tour with?
Any from any time?
Anytime. Anytime.
Jodeci. Okay. See, I'm really dating myself now. Jodeci.
I love it.
I would love to have been touring with Prince.
Yeah.
Again, I'm dating myself. I'm showing myself that I'm plus 40 now. You know, Prince was pretty sweet. And I know this isn't R&B, but just somebody that I thought was really cool that listening to is Jimi Hendrix. I would love to see what it was like to rock and roll like that with Jimi Hendrix. I think that'd be pretty cool.
I love that. I would add Boys to Men to that group, but I agree.
Okay.
I'd add.
All right. Now my turn again for you, right?
Yep.
Okay. Rapid fire question 2. All right, here you go. All right. Your last meal. What's your last meal you're rolling with?
My last, I'd probably make it last a really long time in hopes that I could get freed. So I've been watching a show, Titans, which is all about DC and Gotham City. So if I was having my last meal, I'd want somebody to come in there and help me get out. But I would say, well, I'm Hispanic and Italian, so I'd want to have enchiladas, tacos, my homemade nachos. Because I'm gonna eat as long as I possibly can. Rigot pie from my grandma, my dad's mom, that I now make. So I'd have rigot pie. I would have my other grandma's stuffed shells and Italian wedding soup. That's what I would do.
Wow. Well, you did not hold back on that. That was a full on-course meal right there.
Yeah, because I got to make sure that I stay alive as long as I can. So
right on.
And then I would have Lincourt Bakery. I would have their Italian bread.
Okay. All right. I got you.
Have you been to Lincourt Bakery since you've been here?
I don't believe I have. I think I have not been there in person, but I know people have talked about it to me.
Okay. Well, their bread and their donuts by far the best. So we need to make sure that you get your helping of
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My second one for you, if you were recruiting me to play corner for you, tell me the reasons why I should come be coached by you.
Because I'm never going to lie to you. Number 1, you're always going to have fun playing for us. Number 2, number 3, the track record speaks for itself, right? We've developed players to get to the NFL. So that's your passion. That's your drive. We've done it before. We can do it now with you as well. And last but not least, you're not going to be around somebody who takes better care of you off and on the field. Simple as that.
Damn, I want to come play for you right now.
All right. Let's go. See if you've got some eligibility left.
I do. What's your last question for me?
Okay. Final one. Pick anywhere in the world that you would, if you had like let's just say a week to go visit and hang out. Where are you going?
Italy and Spain. I want to go see my family.
Okay. That's fair. I like those ones. That's a very, have you been there before?
I have been to neither.
Oh, okay. So there you go. Well, maybe that's your next vacation then right there. You better get that thing planned.
It may have to be. All right. My last question for you, Nick. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received, and who did it come from?
Best piece of advice. Probably my old man, probably my dad. Hey, make sure your faith is right, son, because that's all you really have right now. And as you get into the real world, decisions get harder, consequences get greater, and problems are going to arise on a daily basis that you never had to worry about when you're younger. If your faith is right, you'll be just fine. And that's been instilled in me from a young buck to now. And that's something I rock with every day.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm very strong in my faith as well. There's something that is always looking at me in the studio, and it's this picture.
Very
On
good.
the back of it, it's a very simple phrase. I don't know if you can see it here. The light. Let me see here if I can get it closer. It says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," is right here with me. John
Good
14.
stuff. Good stuff, Dan. I love it. I love it.
That coming from Nick Monroe. Nick, I hope that this is the first of many conversations. I would love to continue to keep in touch with you. I know we've been able to keep in touch for a while. We've gotten to do this now for the first time, and I hope that we can do many more of these because I respect you. I appreciate you, and I love the fact that we have that bond of faith and telling the truth and integrity and just being good people and family men. So would love to continue to have these conversations. And I honestly can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you did this today.
Now, thank you, Dan. Like I said before, you're a first-class guy, and I respect the heck out of your work. It's great to know I've got a brother in you, and anytime you got my number, we're connected now for life. So whatever you need, you let me know. And again, this has been a wonderful chapter in my book. And like I said, we'll be hitting a lot of vacations back here to CNY for sure.